my questions are literally going to be in a sense of genuine enthusiasm.
I love that question. Oh my God.
I see you getting such good, beautiful tidbits of the artists' lives.
Another episode of Genuine Enthusiasm. Today, I'm bringing back a favorite of mine and a favorite of the Taylor Swift world, Dan Shapiro. Today, I'm excited to welcome back Dan Shapiro, widely known in the Swiftie community as the Swiftie ticket guru. If you've been following our previous conversations, you know Dan didn't set out to become a TikTok sensation. He was just trying to get Taylor Swift Eras tour tickets for his family. Along the way, he became one of the most trusted voices for fans navigating Ticketmaster chaos, resale pitfalls, and the world of Swiftie fandom. In our first episode, we talked about how he rose to TikTok fame, how shared fandom strengthened his relationship with his kids, and the pressure of being a trusted guide for thousands of fans. In our second chat, we dug into ticket drop patterns, fan theories, marketing insights from life of a showgirl, and why Swifties approach every era like detectives.
And the
Today,
Blue Jays and the Phillies too.
exactly. Today, in the third conversation, we're going deeper, where we will explore the evolution of his TikTok content, the highs and lows of it, viral fame, how fandom shapes real life relationships, and even some bigger questions around celebrity culture, privacy, and the responsibilities fans carry. So,
Love it.
Dan,
Let's
so
go.
Dan,
Go deep today. Love it.
So, Dan, to kick things off, looking back at your journey from a parent just trying to get Swift tickets, to becoming a public voice in the fandom, do you ever feel pressure being so tied to one specific thing? Do you ever worry about making a mistake or people turning on you? And how do you handle that? Wow. Let me get a drink of water.
Sure. No, I could definitely talk for a while about that. So I guess take it like piece by piece, right? I mean, do I feel pressure? Sure, right. To a degree, there's a pressure to try to be correct, to be on top of things. I'd say more recently, one thing that I've kind of become known for is like when there's any kind of Taylor Swift drop happening, whether it's potential new music or merch or whatever, I often go live and people hang out in my live and I try to tell them what I think is happening and when it's going to happen. And, people have come to trust my opinions on that. I'm not right 100% of the time, but I've continued to guess pretty effectively. Um, and pretty well. So people have a lot of trust in me. So, like if there's a day where I'm in the office and something happens, I feel like, oh my God, I can't be there for people who are probably like, why isn't Dan live right now? So there's a pressure to it, but I do my best to try to be there when I can and also recognize that I'm not always going to be there. And I think a lot of my content is aimed at educating people to make the right decisions, whether or not I'm there over their shoulder, be telling them what to do, right? I want people to understand this is how Ticketmaster works. This is how Taylor works. This is when she does drops. This is why she does them. It's because, Billboard this or whatever that. So I think to some degree, it's like I want to position people and empower people to not need me, but still be there as a resource when I can. Uh, as far as the making a mistake part, yeah, if you're a creator, it's always on your mind. Like, did I say something where I put my foot in it, whether I meant to or not, or unintentionally? Um, and it's always something you think about. And if you don't think about that before you press the post button on your content, um, that you're making a mistake. I think this time of year, one thing that I definitely like struggle with is my daughter does a lot of Girl Scout content. And most of the year, my kids are, I'd say, rare visitors to social media for me. But this time of year, my wife and I talk about that. We let Nora kind of run free a little bit on social media, more than we probably would ever do for a 10-year-old normally. but as part of her selling cookies. And she's sold almost 2,000 boxes this year. I mean, she's having an amazing cookie season. She's had multiple viral videos. Kid knows what she's doing. She's a star. But do I feel a little bit of like that? Am I exposing my kid too much, too soon, kind of stuff? So yeah, there's always those balancing acts that you play as a creator, as a parent, and as whatever micro level celebrity I am in the Swifty community. To be accurate, timely, and responsible.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, look, there's also the political aspect to it right now, right? Of course, it's hard to avoid that in the U.S. I am not shy about speaking out on politics. I'm very active in my local Democratic Party, and on the recent national issues, I've been very vocal. And like I know there's people who aren't going to like that. I know I've got followers who don't agree with that. But I don't, I'm at the point where I think it's more important to speak out than it is to stay silent for the sake of keeping some followers. That's if those people are still following me and you agree with what's going on, you probably shouldn't be following me at this point. But yeah, but that's a tricky part of it as well. And I think it's been uniquely more an issue during the past, I'd say 4 to 6 months, as the Trump presidency has come into full whatever this is.
Well, I mean, you did touch on this a bit, but I'll go a little deeper. It's just that your TikTok audience has grown so much. Do you ever feel like you're carrying the expectation of thousands of fans? How do you manage that? Like, I'll just add to that. Like, when a post goes viral, the feedback can be intense. Do you ever worry about being misinterpreted or even canceled? I don't even know you that well. I'm getting to know you, but we've not met in person. But I'm always worried about you getting canceled because you're a man, you're an older man, we're similar age, and I mean, you're a married man and you have children, but I always fear, is there going to be some negative person out there that's just going to try to cancel you even though you're a good person? Do you ever fear that? Because I fear for that for you, you know?
I think you fear for it for any creator who you enjoy their content, that that they won't do something to deserve to be canceled, slash do something accidentally that gets them canceled. I like to believe that I don't do things that would require a cancel. I guess I mean, look, everyone obviously thinks well of themselves, but I do try to be a good person, and I think that the version of myself I put forward online is a fairly accurate representation of who I am as a person. I'm someone who cares about his kids and making sure they have an amazing life, and taking care of my family and using my nerdy hyperfixations for good. I guess, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, you always worry, and for sure, as a male voice in a largely female fandom, you always feel a little bit of that, like, you know, uh, I hope they are okay with me in this space. I feel like I've earned my stripes, and I feel like TikTok in particular has helped me understand that I'm not alone, as a man in this fandom, that there are so many of us, and I've connected with so many guys, other fellow creators and followers, and whoever, that it just, I don't feel as out of place as I probably did before the discovery of TikTok as a male Swiftie, because there are quite a few of us. But yeah, 100%. It's a fandom that is not necessarily intended for someone who looks like me. But I think at the end of the day, what I've come to decide is that there is no single Swiftie. It's something that runs the gamut from the little toddler bopping along to Opalite, all the way to the great grandparents who took their grandkids, who are now probably taking their own kids to see Taylor 15 years ago at this point. So, but yeah, e- everyone worries that they're going to screw up and people are going to turn on them, but so far, my following has stayed pretty consistent since the end of the the end of the Eras tour. I think I'm probably back to about what my peak was when the Eras tour ended. Because like most Swifty creators, I lost some followers when the tour ended. Because again, I never blamed anyone for doing it. My following largely was people who wanted to get tickets to the tour. Right, tour was over, tickets weren't a thing anymore, and plenty of people, unfollowed. And I said, hey, I wish you well. Like I completely understand. I think now probably a couple years later, I've actually recovered back to the point that I was at. So I think I'm about as big of a following as I've ever had. And recently, I've managed to actually get, I think, over 1,000 followers on both YouTube and Instagram, which I never had before, thanks to my daughter's Girl Scout videos. So we're growing the platform, I guess. So far we're in a positive direction, and no one's canceling me, and I hope it stays that way.
Hmm. Well, how do you maintain your own sense of identity within such an intense, passionate fandom? And I mean, again, like as I follow you on social media, I mean, you do talk about your family, you do talk about girl guys. I get you to talk about baseball. Like, how do you just what is Dan besides this? And do you make sure you have that slice of the pie and you talk about that because or do we is your TikTok specifically just for this one thing and everything else you'd like to keep to yourself?
I think it depends on the time of year and what's going on, right? I mean, there's times when things are more noisy in the Taylorverse, where my content is very, very just Taylor focused because there's so much to talk about and there's so much to keep track of, and there's an appetite for it. But I think if you follow my channel, when we get outside of those times, like the time we're in now, um, my content becomes much more varied, right? I'm not necessarily a single niche creator. I know some people are very much like, I'm only going to do this, and I don't. I'd say if I truly have a niche, it's like nerdy content that is Swifty related, and it's like family content that is sometimes Taylor related. Um, But I don't, the fact that I kind of grew a following around specifically like being the ticket guy, yes, because that was the nerdy hyperfixation that I had at the time that was obviously very important to a lot of people. But, without that, I've managed to keep most of my audience because I think they like me using those nerd powers for other things, whether it's spending an inordinate amount of time helping my daughter figure out clever ways to sell cookies, or whether it's breaking down how and when Taylor's going to do a merch drop, or it's, you know, breaking down mini golf. I mean, whatever I happen to be fixated on, I just sort of go, that's what I'm going to talk about. So I guess that's how it comes out. And there are certainly parts of my life that aren't as visible on TikTok. There's things my kids do that aren't on here. My son and I do a lot of stuff in terms of like sports, whether it's going to games or whatever. He plays. That's not really a big part of what I feature on here, but it's a huge part of my life. Sometimes I almost feel guilty that he's not as featured on the channel as my daughter is, because it just happens that the things that she does are more like content, and the things that he does are just like awesome memories we make together. Um, but it doesn't mean that I'm not doing that. That's it. That's probably the biggest thing that you guys don't see is all the time I spend with my son, because we do spend a lot of time together, playing board games, going to sporting events. You know, he's my sports nut basically. So I've got one kid who's sort of like my little feeder person, and the other is a sports nut. But I will say, for that, my son is going to be in the middle school play this weekend. So he's a little bit of a Renaissance man himself. He does a little bit of everything too.
But I do remember talking about your son, that moment when, unless I misunderstood, but from what I remember, there was that moment when you were doing the listening party of the album. And it was just a cute moment where I saw the three of you
Yeah.
all getting excited about different songs. And I saw, brother and sister kind of talking, and you kind of, I know you were going to listen to it later when they went to sleep. there was just this cute moment where the three of you were excited in different ways. So I know he does like Taylor. He came to
He does.
Toronto, my understanding, right? What was it?
Yeah,
Toronto?
he was part of the famous Toronto trip. You know, he had I mean, he's been a Swifty since he was born too. Like his first ever favorite song was "Shake It Off." When he was little, we must have played "Shake It Off" 9 million times. Like that kid just was obsessed with that song. But he's always been a fan. And you know, when I was trying to get tickets, and I managed to be gifted the 2 tickets for Indy, and I had to kind of tell him like, "I'm sorry, buddy. Like, you know, your sister's going to go with me." He understood, but he was upset, and justifiably so. But he kind of knew that like if I could manage to score tickets for Toronto, that he was going to get to go. And um, I was trying to buy tickets, right? You know, that Toronto was a show that I had attempted to purchase tickets for. So I was hoping in one of the Ticketmaster drops I might be able to buy tickets, but I never even had a chance. I never got picked to even have a chance to get into the queues to buy. And, you know, until well, the last minute when Jameson Watermotor gifted me those tickets, I didn't think we were going. And I still remember the day that I was sitting in that chair right back there. And my son walks in and he looked at me and he was like, "So were we able to buy any tickets, Dad?" And I was like, I couldn't. And he just kind of like crawled in my lap, you know, and he's 12 at this point. He crawled in my lap. He's like, "So I guess sometimes good things don't always happen for good people." And I don't know what to say. Like, you're breaking my heart here, kid, right? Like I was just, you know, tearing up and trying to comfort him, but like still feeling like I had failed him. You know, I obviously had managed to get my daughter to this show, but he really wanted to go too. And I didn't think it was going to happen until Jameson gifted those tickets to us. And then obviously that was history. But yeah, so he was there, and he's every bit of a fan. You know, I'd say Nora's a little more crazy than he is. Like she's like a Swiftie, and he's like a Swiftie. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Swifties are known for being super detailed oriented, almost like detectives. Have you ever been surprised by the ways fans interpret something you posted or shared during one of your lives?
No, I mean, I tend to just kind of lay out the facts a lot, you know, so I don't know that I get as many things that I post that someone, you know, interprets in a way that I wasn't expecting. It definitely happens sometimes. And it's all those times when you post something and I'll say that the biggest one I ever remember was uh, there was the show where Travis came to the show, and the Kelseys were all there. And there was this shot where Travis was in the tent watching Taylor. I think she was singing "Lover," if I remember correctly. And Kylie was behind Travis, and you see Kylie kind of look at Travis and then look at Taylor and then look at Travis and look at Taylor. And this was the time where people was like, "Oh, this is a PR relationship, right?" And I'm like, I saw this video, and I posted just the clip of this, and the text I put on the screen was something about how like, you know, well, if this is a PR relationship, these people are the best actors of all time or something. And I posted it kind of as a way of saying like, clearly this is not a PR relationship. Like Travis is genuinely in love with Taylor. Kylie is not acting here. She's just appreciating how much, you know, her brother-in-law is happy. And there were so many comments that like completely misunderstood what I was trying to do. And I could kind of get it, because if you didn't have like the context of the video that this comment response came from and what I was responding to, and I was like, okay. But that was more of like I'd say a misunderstanding than like a misinterpretation to something that I particularly centered it. I am always impressed at the interpretations that come out of the fandom of like the most random things, you know, and the way that people are able to draw these connections that sometimes I go, I don't think so, but go on with yourself. And sometimes I go, man, that seems like a really compelling and maybe logical thing that Taylor was thinking as she did whatever. But yeah, I mean, the fandom's amazing. I don't know that I've felt like they've tried to interpret my content in the same way, but that's okay. If I make content that is requiring that level of interpretation, I feel like I failed something.
All right, Ticketmaster.
God.
With all the Ticketmaster chaos and resell drama, do you ever feel like the system is stacked against fans? How
Oh,
do you
yeah.
how do how do you emotionally handle sharing that reality?
It feels like it is, and it has not felt significantly better as time has gone on. Ticketmaster has definitely tried to do some things, in particular in the past year, that we haven't seen before. But there are still the same fundamental problems, right? And you look at the pre-sale for Ariana Grande's tour, complete disaster. You look at the pre-sale for Harry Styles' tour recently, another mess. Next week is going to be Noah Khan's pre-sale, which I'm going to be participating in because we want to go to that show, and I'm expecting it to be another mess. But I think the reality is it's still a system where being as educated as you can be on how this system works is a competitive advantage for you, the fan, to have the best chance of getting what you want. And I look at it as I know people are going to fail. I know I am going to fail probably more often than I'm going to succeed to get tickets because that's just the nature of the way that Ticketmaster works. But I will give myself the best chance possible, and I will give my followers the best chance possible to be successful if they pay attention to what I'm saying and they utilize that knowledge, in the right way. So I look at it more that way. Like, yes, some people are going to be sad. And I know when I do a post and I say, hey, I was able to, or I was not able to get tickets for this, I'm going to get comments because some of them are going to be like, yeah, I didn't get tickets. It was terrible. And some are going to be like, oh my God, thank you so much. Your tips were so helpful. I was able to land some tickets. And it's just kind of weighing the two, right? And just feeling like I'm giving people the best chance I can give them to come out on top, knowing that not everyone's coming out on top because to some degree it's random draw, right? When you get a queue position, if it's a lousy queue position because you randomly got dumped in the back of the line, there's no amount of tips that I can give you to fix the fact that you were number 30,000 in a venue that seats 10,000 people, right? And there is where I say Ticketmaster should do a better job, but they don't. They don't. Like again, you'll see it in the Noah Khan sale. There was no vetting or limiting of the pre-sale entries, right? So everyone who wanted to be a part of this pre-sale, as long as they passed the Ticketmaster bot detection stuff they added, is part of the pre-sale. So it could mean that 100,000 people sign up to go see him in Philadelphia. Well, there's 40,000 seats in Citizens Bank Park, right? And if everyone who signed up shows up, you're going to have a 100,000 person queue for 40,000 seats. There are other artists who've done this differently. Chaperone did a tour recently, and on Chapel's tour, which I love this approach, what she did was instead of sending out everyone like, yep, come buy tickets at this time, they were taking batches of people, say like 1,000 people, and saying, you can go buy tickets. And once they bought tickets, they invited another 1,000 in. And you didn't get an invite to try and purchase unless you were selected. I ended up being waitlisted on that one, right? I never got a chance, but it's fine. I didn't have to wait in line for hours to be told, sorry, you don't get tickets. I just said, okay, it is what it is, right? But and like BTS, right? BTS is touring, and they just did a pre-sale maybe 2 weeks ago. BTS's pre-sale, they did something more like what Taylor did, where you applied for a pre-sale code and then they issued codes. Now, I don't know if they issued the right number of codes, right? Like they probably gave out too many entries like they did for Taylor. But again, not everyone who asked to be in the pre-sale gets to be in the pre-sale. And that's the better system, where you only let people in if there's a fair chance they actually could buy tickets, as opposed to Ticketmaster's approach, which is let everyone in, and many people are going to be pissed off because they're going to just get no chance to buy. They're going to be too far back in the queue. They don't have to do that. They could do better, and they're still consistently not.
Well, in a previous interview, I did give you the opportunity to be the president of Ticketmaster and sort of say, what you would do. And we have that clip available, so we won't rehash that. But what I am going to force you to do in this particular game we're doing is I want you to say something nice about Ticketmaster. What are they doing right? And before you answer that, I mean, it just seems that no matter what they do, and this might sound like I'm defending Ticketmaster, but it seems like no matter what they do, there is going to be still someone or a lot of people, particularly, I don't even want to just say Swifties, fans of big artists, I will say, so Swifties don't yell at me, popular artists that if they don't get tickets, they're going to feel like it's Ticketmaster's fault for whatever reason. Sometimes you just don't get, as your son politely said it earlier, that sometimes you don't get good things don't happen to good people. Your son is such a smart guy. Like that's going to resonate with me for the rest of this interview. But all I have to say is just what I'm getting at is say something nice about Ticketmaster, because do you think it's just inevitable that no matter what they do, you could be shit out of luck?
Yeah, it's a supply and demand problem, right? And especially for artists like Taylor, but many others, there is not enough supply of available seats for the demand of the fandom, right? And I think in the documentary, um, the one of Taylor's, like cruise tour managers had said that they had enough demand to fill like another 100 or 200 stadiums, right? Like that they could have the Eras tour, as big as it was, could have been 200 more shows just to get everyone who wanted a ticket to see it, right? And that's 200 football stadiums. That's a lot more people. Um, so yeah, it's a supply and demand problem. And in general, for very popular artists, there is not enough supply to meet the demand, and people will be upset. That said, something nice I can say about Ticketmaster is I genuinely think we are seeing some recent signs that they are trying things they have not tried before to create a better fan experience, right? And we'll take the Noah Khan tour, and they did the same thing, I think, for Ariana, where they've added this persona validation system where you may be asked either post-purchase or pre-purchase to send in a selfie or a picture of your ID with this third-party persona system to make them know that you're not a bot, that you're a real human being. And that is an incredibly effective way to try to keep the bots out of the sale in a way that we haven't seen before. We'll see how effective this is on Noah's pre-sale coming up. Another thing that we're seeing again that artists are doing and Ticketmaster is kind of giving more leeway on is using the resale like restrictions. So non-transferable tickets, the face value exchange hosted on Ticketmaster, and genuinely trying to manage the problem. Now, in the not nice part, I can say that I'm not sure Ticketmaster is doing this out of altruism. I think they're doing it out of a desire to avoid more flack from the DOJ, who's been coming after them, and the courts who've been coming after them for their actions. So, I don't know necessarily that they're trying to do this to create a better system. I think they're trying to do it to cover themselves. But they are positive steps, I think, to try to create a better fan experience. At the end of the day, I think the biggest thing they could do would be implement, and I know it's more work for them, but implement some kind of system where people we don't invite every single person into a pre-sale when there is far more signups than there are seats, right? If nothing else, creating a system where, hey, we had enough signups for this sale, we are going to pre-select accounts. Your account was selected, your account was not selected. But tell people transparently, say, you've been given a chance to purchase. Sorry, you haven't. And at least at that point, you no longer have to sit there for hours trying to get into a sale only to be told, sorry, you're at the back of the line and the line is 8 miles long. But if you just get told, look, if you get in, we're letting you in because we're going to guarantee you pretty much that there's going to be a ticket, right? You're not going to have a bad purchasing experience. You're going to have a small number of people in there with you. Buy it, get in, get out, great. Or sorry, you're not in it at all. And you lost out on this one, but you don't have to take days out of your life to find out that you lost, right? Those are the kind of things they could do. And it is well within their power to do it. They've done it for artists like Taylor, BTS, like the mega artists. They should be doing it for, I'd say, the next tier of artists too. The ones, we'll take Sabrina's tour, Gracie's tour, Harry Styles, Bruno Mars, like all of these recent tours, probably Noah Khan next week, that are in that kind of just below the megastar range where you have the same problem and they don't try a different solution. It's the same approach every single time of just let them all in, see where you land in the queue, and then sit there for an hour only to be told tickets are sold out when you get to the end of the queue. Or, hey, the only tickets left cost $18,000 for some VIP or whatever.
Swifties often feel deeply connected to Taylor, not just as a performer, but as a person. With situations like the recent fallout with Blake Lively, where private texts and friendships became public, how do you think fans should navigate their connection to an artist when real life drama exposes personal boundaries? Do you ever worry about the pressure fans put on celebrities? And how does that shape the way you talk about her or guide your community?
That's a great question. I think it's fair to say that most Swifties who are serious Swifties have some degree of parasocial relationship with Taylor at this point. She's been part of our lives for 2 decades, right? For some fans like myself, and less for others, but she's a huge part of our lives. She's the soundtrack to so many of our lives. And yes, because she sings in such a personal way and she tells stories about herself and she is so open and vulnerable about herself in her personal life in so many different ways. The documentary, the interview she did, New Heights, like everything she does, she's very open, right? And she lets you feel like you know who she is. And it does create some of that challenge when things come out, like the Blake situation. I mean, to be honest, to me, with the most recent round of everything that came out, I felt that absolved Taylor quite a bit because, you saw her being, I think, a genuinely good friend to someone who she stood by, despite a lot of the rumors of otherwise. And if you listen to the song Canceled, you would know that Taylor has stood by Blake the entire time. And that's how she talks to us sometimes, right? It's through song. But yeah, I mean, to the degree of like your attachment to celebrity in general, how should the fandom handle celebrities? It is 100% a challenging issue. I guess I try to stay away from the parasocial content sometimes, and there have been times where I've posted videos and I thought to myself that was like a little too parasocial, and I've even deleted videos at times that I said, what, I don't think I needed to have posted that because it just came off as like too far over the edge. So I do try to watch it, but I think in general, Trevor, most of my content is so like nerdy and like factual and just like analytical that I kind of naturally stay a step away from it because I'm looking at things from the perspective of what is Taylor going to do, because she's probably worrying about how she's going to do on Billboard next week or whatever, which is a very different thing than like Taylor and her personal life. I don't post a whole lot of stuff. Like I'm not one of those people who posts like we saw Taylor out in New York the other day and here's a picture of it. Like when Taylor was in Philly, for example, I did a whole post about the restaurant that she ate at because I ate at that restaurant too, and it was literally my favorite restaurant of all time. Which, by the way, my wife and I went back there maybe a month ago, 2 months ago. Still amazing, still amazing. Tallulah's Garden in Philadelphia, fantastic. But like for me, like I didn't look at it as something to talk about. Oh, Taylor was in my town. It was like, oh, I can talk about Tallulah's Garden. I love that restaurant, and and that video was like very popular, right? Like 100,000, 200,000 views, and I'm like, okay. I was just rambling about what I ate 11 years ago for a meal that was very memorable to me. So yeah, I don't know. I that's where I kind of draw the line. I don't do as much of that kind of content. I'll certainly watch my other creators who will do that content sometimes, but I don't tend to do a lot of that.
In entertainment, there's often a rise and a fall. Sometimes fame fades and sometimes it comes back. Do you ever think Taylor Swift could face a moment where she gets canceled or that intensity of her fame might just dim? How do you see that playing out? And what does that mean for her fans?
Like, would it happen again? That's what you're sort of asking? Because I mean, it did, right? We had the rep era. We had the reputation era for Taylor, which, with the whole Kim and Kanye thing, Taylor Taylor's fandom dropped off significantly at the time, right? Because a lot of people believed the portrayal that Kim put forward, um, which I think eventually Taylor was rather exonerated when all of the evidence came out, um, and was, cleared of a lot of wrongdoing. But could that happen again? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Like, there are absolutely things Taylor could do that would dim her star. I also just think that naturally, especially if she does choose to settle down a little bit, right? If she and Travis are going to have a family and, you know, all of the things that come along with that, like, I imagine she will be less present as an artist, especially compared to the last almost a decade at this point of how prolific she has been with her art since, I don't even know, 2019 or so. Like, the amount of content this woman has churned out in terms of just album after album after album, which are critically and financially just smash successes every single time, and has grown the fandom tremendously. Could it ever fall off? Absolutely. Right. And will there be a point where Taylor becomes more of a nostalgia act? Probably. Right. But given where she's at right now, I think we are, a ways off of that, with the only big caveat being if she decides she's going to like fade into the limelight a bit and have some kids and like focus on being a mom for a while, more power to her. Like, but absolutely, it's hard for you to be Taylor Swift when you're trying to actually have a more normal life, right? The way this woman functions is anything but normal, um, in terms of how busy she is, how much she writes, how much she creates, how much she does when she tours. How do you balance the two? If anyone could do it, it's probably her. But I tend to think there's going to come a time in the next decade where we will see a lot less of Taylor, and I don't think it's a bad thing. And she's given us 300 songs already to pick from, so pick an album, you're fine.
Being tied to one fandom and platform, have you ever thought about what would happen if your TikTok account went away? How would you handle that?
So I have definitely been cross posting more on Instagram and YouTube, especially recently. I often do it during cookie season, but I've been sort of experimenting with bringing some of my other content over there as well. It definitely resonates stronger with my audience on TikTok, and I don't think that's a surprise because the Swifties are here, right? The Swifties know that Swift Talk is where you want to be. And the crazy Swifties who care about the stuff to the level I do in terms of like the analytics and the nerdy side of things, they're here. So with TikTok, I definitely feel like that's where my home would be. If it went away, if TikTok got banned again or something, it would really depend, I think, on like where the Swifties landed, right? I would probably follow the fandom, and if it was Instagram or whatever, that's fine. But I have been trying to post a little bit more on the other platforms to have a little bit more of a following there. I will genuinely say, I fear posting content on Instagram and YouTube because of how toxic the comment section always is. Um, and in a way that does not happen on TikTok very much. I post a lot of content about a pop singer for someone who is a 46-year-old, balding white guy. And on TikTok, I do that, and generally people don't judge me for what I love. Sometimes, rarely, here and there, especially when posts escape the Swifty bubble, but it's not common, right? It's the exception, not the rule. On the other platforms, it just feels constant. So would I like it if TikTok? No, I'd hate it if TikTok got banned, because to me, this is where the most reasonable fandom exists, and the most people who I feel are just accepting and friendly, and I guess thank you to the Chinese whatever who built the algorithm, but it's pretty good about keeping you in your bubble if that's where you want to be. The other platforms do not do that effectively, and there's also not as robust of a fandom to pull from. So you end up just with your content hitting a lot more people who it probably doesn't resonate with, and those are not good experiences in those platforms when people tend to be so aggressive and toxic in the comments. And so that's part of why I hate to do it. Like I know if I post something that, like a video on YouTube that I was super excited about putting on TikTok, people on YouTube can be like, "Oh my God, why are you doing this? You're some old guy. Like, stop talking about this." And I'm like, I don't want to deal with it, right? Taylor said it herself. Your energy is valuable, right? Energy is expensive. And is this where I want to spend my energy? But yeah, sure. I would say that, TikTok is by no means like, it's a nice bit of extra money I make on the side doing the creator rewards thing, and very rarely doing like promotional content. And if that went away, like it wouldn't massively affect my ability for my family to do fun things. But yeah, I would miss that part too, because it's nice getting paid to talk about things you were going to talk about anyway.
What's the most meaningful moment you've had as a Swiftie? Something beyond tickets or TikTok fame?
I think you're gonna make me cry here, probably. But it all comes back to Lily Tomlinson for me. The most impactful thing that I've ever really gotten to do as someone who has a platform is help the Tomlinson family with getting the support they needed during their time. I'll briefly give the story. This is, I don't know, people watching this episode know it, but so Lily is a neighbor of mine, like literally lives about 2 miles from me, and I randomly came across her mom's post. This was December before last, I guess, December 2 years, not 25, 24. And her mom had started this hashtag Swifties for Lily because her daughter, who is literally the same age as my son, was out of nowhere diagnosed with brain tumor, DIPG, which is basically a death sentence. It's one of the most dangerous and incurable kinds of cancer. And this is a kid who literally went from being a happy-go-lucky 12-year-old to a week later being told you have months to live. And it, so being a neighbor of mine, it hit very close to home for me. And, I reached out to her family and I said, I would love to use my platform to help you. And this was right at the end of the Eras Tour. Literally the week that Lily's, diagnosis happened was the week the Eras Tour ended. And I had a lot of following at that time and people paying attention to me. And I'm like, I would love to use my platform for helping your family. I didn't know the Tomlinsons personally before this. I've gotten to know them now because like I said, literally they're a few miles from me. We've seen each other at many events around here. So getting to help them was something that I think it meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to my kids. My son at his bar mitzvah talked about how much meeting Lily meant to him during his speech that he gave. And even literally today, Trevor, Nora came up to me and said, Dad, if we have any videos that get really popular and we make any money off any of the Girl Scout stuff, can I donate some of those proceeds to a cause for Lily? And I said, well, Nora, you have a lot of cookie boxes that people have donated to you that we have to figure out who to go to. So I will absolutely ask Lily's mom if there's a particular like local charity we can give them to. So I mean, it continues to have massive meaning to me. And unfortunately, Lily lost her fight last summer. But getting to just to use my platform for something that important, that's far more important than going to a concert was, I'd say, the most meaningful thing that I've gotten to do with the power that I've had. Aside from like, was it great going to the Eras tour because I had a following and helped people? Sure, remarkable experience both times. You know, some of the opportunities I've been able to create for my kids, it's hard to replace those. But being able to be there for someone to help them raise literally like I think it was around $100,000 for their family to be able to take time off, to be able to do the upgrades they needed to their house, to take care of Lily. Yeah, and and I love those moments whenever we have those. There was another story, what more recently, the Lila, the little baby who had saw Taylor and said, "That's my friend," and a lot of Swifties, not just me, had posted about her. And I mean, the amount of money that our community raised for her was amazing. And again, I had a video that I promised I would donate any of the proceeds from the video, and the video went, for my standards, quite viral. And I think I was able to end up donating like $100 on top of my original donation, just off of the people who saw that video, and then also probably donated. So those kind of things are what I've really loved about having an audience and having a platform. It's being able to help people is something that I'm really happy that I could do that, and that I've got any power in the world to do that. I could definitely do that.
Looking ahead, Dan, what's next for you, both as a creator and in the fandom?
Well, the next couple months is still cookie season, so Nora and I have so much more cookie related content coming. By the time this airs, I'm guessing the video that we just finished, I finished editing today for her next big music video, will be out. It's wicked, it's popular themed, and it's cute. I don't know. You never know if they're gonna go viral, or it's gonna be like I put literally hours and hours and hours into this and it gets like 200 views. You never know, right, with the algorithms. But I think it's adorable, so hopefully people will like it too. So we have plenty more cookie content coming for the next couple months. I think cookie season was actually extended by 2 weeks because the weather's been so terrible in our region. Snow, cold. The girls have just not been able to really sell. So we have a long way to go in cookie season. Beyond that, I guess I don't know, right? Because a lot of it is obviously talking about what Taylor is doing. I honestly anticipate this to be a rather quiet year for Taylor. I don't think this is going to be a particularly busy year. Like the last half of last year was insane, and in terms of how much stuff was happening between, I'd say, the end of May when she got her master's back through the end of the year with the release of the Eras Tour doc and the movie. Like, it was just 6 months of being fed nonstop of just stuff to talk about. I think this year's going to be really quiet. I think maybe toward the end of the year, when we get to the 20th anniversary of debut, we might get debut Taylor's version or something like that. But I don't know. So, it's a good question. What am I going to talk about this year if there's nothing to talk about in the Taylor verse? I don't know. For me, it's always about what am I fixated on, right? What does my hyperfixation land on? And this time of year, it's Girl Scout cookies with Nora, and we'll get into the summer. We'll see. I will probably make more videos about the Olympics. I love Winter Olympics, so they started today. The first events were today. Curling, which is one of my favorite sports. I'm not joking. I fell in love with curling when I was in Canada in my youth. We went up for a family trip to Toronto. I watched curling on TV. I said, "This is freaking amazing." My brother and I loved it. I was probably 8, and I have loved. I've gone to the curling nationals. I have went curling for my best friend's bachelor party. I stayed up till 5 a.m. to watch the U.S. win gold in 2018. Like I am a curling nut. So very excited for the Winter Games. You'll probably see that kind of content too. But yeah, I don't know. It's whatever way the wind blows and whatever I'm fixated on and what Taylor is doing. And I don't think it's just going to be as active of a year for Taylor as we've had. And when that happens, I tend to just follow my fixations.
Before we wrap up, we're going to play a game.
All right.
And this is going to be hard for you because you are very thorough in your answers, but I'm going to try to get you to just be short to the point.
All right.
This
I'll
is gonna
try.
this is going to be its own little clip. It's predictions with Dan.
Okay.
3 questions.
Keep it snappy. We got it.
Will Taylor Swift ever do a halftime show? Will the marriage last? And will there be children for that couple?
Yes. Yeah. I think eventually she'll do a halftime show after Travis retires. I think that she and Travis, what I'd say is that the kind of songs that Taylor's writing about this relationship are not the kind of songs that she's been able to write for a very long time about any other relationship. And it speaks to volumes to me. And I think that Travis is just a really good dude. And I think the two of them work together. And yeah, I think there will be kids. I believe what she told us in the song Wishlist. You know, I think that's genuinely what she wants. And I think she's found the person she wants to have that family with. And I wish him the best. I mean, I love the Kelseys. I'm a huge Kelsey fan. So
Dan, it's been incredible hearing your reflections on pressure, fame, fandom, celebrity culture. I think listeners will appreciate how personal, thoughtful, rounded you've been in navigating all this. This is interview number 3. Thank you for doing this. I think I'm going to give you a break until the next tour because I feel like what else left to tap in? We really did like what do you call this when it's 3 episodes?
yeah, like a little trilogy. It was kind of the
This is the trilogy.
during the tour, post tour, and then kind of just revisiting the whole thing here at the end and looking at Showgirl as sort of retrospective. Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed our conversations. I'm sure there'll be a 4th eventually in the future when there is more to talk about. And maybe this summer there'll be some sports content if you come down to Philly.
I am coming to Philly. It's August. I looked into this. It's August when the Jays play Philly. And that was one question I wouldn't mind asking. How did it feel, as much as you had that beautiful experience with your son, walking into Skydome where Joe Carter hit that home run against Philly? Now, was that your first time
No,
since that
no,
moment? Okay.
no. I had got when I was in college. So this would have been about a decade after Joe Carter broke my heart. Um, a bunch of my fraternity brothers and I went up to Toronto for like literally like a day during our winter break or spring break or something. We just drove up from Pittsburgh and we did a tour of, I guess then probably was still called Skydome at the time. So I had been in the building and walked past the pictures of Joe Carter and, you know, grumbled to myself. I think because the Eras Tour stage was where the baseball field was supposed to be, it was much easier to ignore the fact that the home run was hit right about there. So yeah, no, I was all ready to forgive Joe Carter, and instead the grudge continues since the Jays. Oh, that was heartbreaking. I felt so bad for you guys the way that series ended. I thought you were gonna beat the Dodgers, man. I was so ready to celebrate. And Trey Savage is like a local guy. He he grew up right near where I lived, and he was like the hero. I was like, oh, this guy's amazing. I love this guy. And then he ended up being one of the guys who, you know, couldn't hold it down there in the end.
It was our time to get hurt. It can't
Oh,
and justifying that you can't, we've only been to the World Series 3 times. We've won 2 of the 3 times. We can't always win. So I think this was our moment of getting hurt.
Yeah, that's gonna hurt. That was a tough way to lose. Unfortunately, like it looked like you had it, and then Jeff Hoffman did what he did in Philadelphia many
Uh,
times. We've seen that play before. We didn't like the ending either. So, but yeah, man, I don't know. I feel like the Phillies and the Jays had the two best chances to stop the Dodgers last year, and both of our teams found creative and painful ways to blow it. But hey, baseball comes again. Spring blooms soon. It all begins anew. It's a whole season. We all start back over at 0-0. So pitchers and catchers report in about a week,
yes.
and we have a whole year to wait to see if someone can finally beat the Dodgers.
Yes. All right, Dan. Thanks very much for your time, and thanks everyone for watching. Thanks,
All right,
Dan.
thank you guys.